Okay, so Tiffany Hughes, and do you prefer Ms. Hughes or Tiffany?
Oh, I go by Tiffany.
Okay, so could you tell us a little bit about yourself, your role, and what brings you joy as a school social worker?
Yeah, so my name is Tiffany Hughes. I'm a 2013 graduate of ASU. Prior to that, I was in law enforcement and I was in the military. I was a child welfare stipend student and started my career at DCS. And during that time, it gave me some really invaluable skills. But it definitely was going into the schools. I always was really interested in school social work. And so the first year of when they started really increasing school social workers in schools, in like 2019, 2020 is when the first big push happened. And now after the pandemic, there's an even bigger push. I was acting as a field liaison and I showed up at a school at Roosevelt School District and loved it and was like, are you guys hiring people? And so I like went there and haven't left. So I've been here for a couple of years. I'm now the lead social worker. I oversee all 19 social workers in our district. Our district goes from up and down the baseline corridor in South Phoenix, from 40th Street all the way down to 35th Avenue. So we are a very large district, like geographic wise, but a small district and a small community because South Phoenix is very tight knit. So I love it here. It's amazing. I've done a lot of different social work. Like I said, I worked at DCS. I worked part-time as a medical social worker. And I also for a while was a like a training supervisor for a UMOM New Day Center. So I did all of the training, made sure our grant requirements and all of that stuff. So one of my favorite things to do is do like trainings and things like that. So I do a lot of those, and I think that's something that I really value. And so I make sure my staff get a lot of opportunities for training and stuff like that too, to make sure that their skills stay sharp. A typical day for me, just like you guys just heard, my favorite way to start my day is to stand at one of our front gates and welcome all the kids. Like by far, all of our schools are K-8s. I love meeting kids in the morning. It used to be in the cafeteria, but now they're eating, we're still kind of doing COVID mitigation. So now they're eating in their classrooms. So every morning I stand at one of the two gates. I kind of try and trade off because the kids get jealous if I stand at just one gate and not the other gate. And I welcome students in. I check what their climate, what are we going to see today, right? And I welcome every single person in, wave to their parents. I just kind of want to see where we're at, and that can really tell me how my day is going to go. And then from there, I typically do have individual clients I see. I also have groups. But sometimes those groups, because a crisis happens, or the individual client, is gonna have to wait. So it just kind of depends. That's the thing I think I love about social work. I also, during the pandemic, started a pantry at my school where parents can shop for free. And it kind of looks like a little store. So we do that every Wednesday. And so part of my day is also taking our 8th graders and 7th graders in there for them to help me restock things, clean it up, and do that kind of stuff. And so what I really like about school social work is one, I feel like it's prevention in a lot of ways, right? So often when I was working in child welfare prior, I was showing up after the fact. And I really love that now I'm here all during that, right? And I'm trying to really mitigate some of those risks that might be happening within families. I also just really love that my morning can start out as something simple, right? Like doing a one-on-one session. And then I could be doing a training in the afternoon, or I could be doing a crisis in the afternoon, or I could be leading mindfulness in our gardens. Here at VH Lassen, the school that I'm currently at, we have this beautiful garden. It's an agriculture school. So if you guys ever want to come down here, it's on Vineyard and 11th Avenue. It's called Spaces of Opportunity. It's very beautiful. And our students are over there all the time. And I love walking through the gardens with them. And so I think the thing that I like most about social work is school social work is it incorporates so many different things about social work. I could be doing like individuals, in micro social work, and then be doing macro work at the end with communities and things like that. And I just also love seeing the kids grow up. Seeing a kid that goes from kindergarten and then they're graduating is very beautiful, and seeing how resilient and how amazing they can be. And then I always feel like the breaks also come right when we need them. Like summer is amazing to have that off. So that's always good. And I think right now too, they're starting to see that the social workers, that school social workers, school counselors, school mental health in general is extremely important. And our district is really prioritizing that. And I feel lucky to be a part of that. And we just got a grant that's going to be a 5-year grant. That's going to be $5 million for the next 5 years for us to increase the mental health in our schools, in our district. And so I'm really excited to see what we can do with that. So I think I got everything.
Wonderful. Thank you, Tiffany. It was so great to see both from you and Lauri, like the various pathways through social work that people move through. Now we will hear from Becky Grudowski. And do you prefer Ms. Grudowski or Becky?
Becky is totally fine.
Great, thank you. So if you could tell us a little bit about yourself, what your roles are, and what brings you joy in being a school social worker.
Sure. So I graduated from ASU with my BSW in 2005 and my MSW in 2010. I also did the child welfare specialized program and started my career at DCS after receiving my master's degree. Following my time with DCS, which was wonderful and invaluable experience, but I wanted to kind of pivot into a more direct role and work on some of those clinical kind of skills. And so I came over to Southwest Behavioral and Health Services about 8 years ago. And I started out as a school-based clinician. And currently I'm the program director of our school-based program in the East Valley. Southwest, we have it's called School and Community-Based Counseling Services. And we have programs in the North Valley, Central, West Valley, and the East Valley. So I'm in the East Valley. My program is a little bit unique from the other two individuals that just spoke in that we are not a part of the school. We collaborate very closely with the school. So we are school-based therapists. I oversee a team of about 20 therapists, and we partner with schools within in the East Valley. We're in Chandler Unified School District, Mesa Public Schools, Gilbert Public Schools, and Kyrene Elementary School District. And then we work very closely with the schools or the districts at the district level, and then as well as schools at the school level to identify those schools that have kind of like a really higher need for the behavioral health component. And when we identify those schools, then we partner with those schools and have a clinician that will actually go to the campus and meet with the kids that are enrolled in the program in our services there at school. So it's a little unique in that I'm part of a community behavioral health organization, and we partner very closely with schools and work in the schools. So what I really love, what really brings me joy about this program is that whole collaboration piece. I think it's really wonderful that we get to be in the community. A lot of community behavioral health and therapy and medication services are very office-based, and families have to go to an office and schedule an appointment. And we're really immersed in the school and in the community, which makes accessing us a lot easier for families and kiddos, and allows that big collaboration piece where we can communicate with the school counselors, the school social workers, the IEP teams when kids have IEPs or special education needs, teachers, administrators, families. We can bring them all to the table a lot more smoothly, which I think leads to really positive outcomes. So yeah, that's kind of what brings me joy.
Thank you so much. Such committed and dedicated and passionate people that we have heard from. I think we're privileged to hear from them, so thank you. So I just have a couple of prepared questions for our panelists, and again, we'll kind of go in order with them answering them. Students, if you all have questions for the panelists, feel free to start writing those into the chat. And then after the prepared questions, we'll move into your all's questions. So the first question is thinking about that this year's theme for Social Work Month is "The Time is Right for Social Work." This theme really gets at the systemic inequities that we have seen over the last couple of years the racial trauma that is both current, contemporary, as well as historical, and the inequities that the pandemic has brought on. Given that that is the theme, what do you think about is particularly important with respect to school social workers in advancing equity issues? Or why is that theme relevant in school social work? And would you like to start, Lauri?
Yeah, of course. So I think in the past couple of years with the pandemic and everything else that we've seen and the injustices we've seen and the horrific things that we've seen and experienced, I think the time is right for social work, because I think during that time we were really seen as how valuable we really can be. I know that when a lot of us, when we were working from home, it was, sometimes it was very difficult to see our students and to figure out what was happening, especially during lockdown and quarantine. It was especially difficult time because we weren't seeing our students every day, and sometimes they wouldn't show up to our online appointments. And, we'd have to go out and very carefully do home visits if we were able to, if we could. Like I was doing some of those things, and I think for a very long time, teachers and school professionals were seen as how vital we actually are. And when we didn't have that, when we didn't have kids coming to our schools every day, it created such a barrier to services, and it was very concerning because we didn't get to see our kiddos. We didn't get to know how they were doing in the home, and if they were experiencing hardships or adversity in the home. And so I think for the first time in a very long time, we were seen as, wow, social workers really are that vital and that valuable, because we are oftentimes one of the first lines of defense. And considering how much of our students' lives are actually with us in our schools, we're the ones who see them the most. Even among their parents, we probably see them more than their parents during the school year. And we often see and are able to intervene. And we're often sometimes the first line of defense in mental health and seeing issues that arise. So I think that was an especially hard time, but coming out of that, and especially in Arizona, they saw the value of what we do. And what came out of that is the push for additional school funding for school social workers in our schools, and additional positions, even in districts that have never seen a school social worker before. And they're filling those positions, and they're trying to navigate a completely new system with having this new person in the school providing care for the students. So it's been a really great thing coming from something awful. And that's usually what happens is we gain more services when tragedies happen. And especially the several, like a handful of years ago when our East Valley schools were experiencing many deaths by suicide from our students. I think we had in a matter of a few years, we had over 35 deaths by suicide about a few years ago and 4 years ago. Then they started to notice how vital we are in the schools, that we can provide those needed supports and care, because sometimes parents aren't able to secure supports outside of the school, and we're the first to see those things. So that what came out of that was additional funding for school social workers in schools, because it used to be pretty rare to see school social worker positions in our schools. So it's a positive thing coming out of tragedies. And I think, as social workers in and of itself, we are hardwired to help people who are facing injustice, whether it's economic injustice, racial injustice, gender LGBTQ injustice. We are the people, we are the gatekeepers of that. We are the gatekeepers to try to help people navigate those systemic issues. And I think that's where, you know, more and more school social workers get involved in the school districts and are filling up these positions. We're able to holistically meet the needs of those children. Because the MSW program in and of itself, we are a justice-based program. It's a bit different from a regular counseling program. You know, we all know that from a regular marriage and family program, because we hit upon the need to help systems navigate and help people through systems that are creating that injustice. So I hope I'm, you know, not like a little bit too much, but that's kind of like where I'm seeing from my own point of view.
Thank you, Lauri. I appreciate that. So Tiffany, from your perspective, given that the theme for Social Work Month is the time is right for social work, how do you think that theme fits into why school social workers are so important in today's context?
Yeah, I would kind of just piggyback off a lot of the things that Laura was saying, or Lauri was saying, which was, you know, that the pandemic and all of the things that were happening around our country during the last 2 years have really made a perfect storm to show why we are the perfect shelter for that storm sometimes, or why we can help people navigate that storm and drive them through it, I guess. And it's really magnified the inequities that we've known are always there, but people don't want to believe. I'm going to give you guys a really good example of, okay, so it seems really simple, right? Because we're privileged and we have internet access to send all the kids home and they could go through internet. But did we really think through the fact that there are still a lot of students who live in places that don't have access, or they live in places that don't have access to the infrastructure to have internet, or that their parents can't afford it? And how did we think through that? And that was something that wasn't thought through. You know, we think of redlining as something that happened a very long time ago, but something that we like to remind people is that redlining is still very real here in South Phoenix. Is we're a food desert. The infrastructure here is not great. If the wind blows too hard, my internet will go out. So if I leave, that's probably why. And that was, a lot of our families didn't have what they needed to be successful. And so our team also saw an inequity in like the medical care or the testing or the vaccinations, things that were not making its way past that SRP canal, right? Because who's over there? I don't know. We don't know who those people are, right? Like they're not Phoenix citizens, just like everybody else. And so I think what it showed was that we as the social workers mobilized and brought testing into South Phoenix. When vaccinations started, we brought them in here, right? And we started working with other community organizations to really get the stuff that was happening on the other side of the canal, on this side of the canal. And I think that proved that one, the investment was important, right, and was needed. It was an investment that they made prior to a lot of school districts doing it, but I think it's just proved that it was the right investment at the time, right? Like that it was a good thing to make. And now they're also wanting to increase our number of social workers and counselors in our schools too. So I think that, you know, I always tell my social workers that it's our job to remove any barriers to our children getting like their education. And I think that there's, you know, that is like one of the best careers you could ever have, right? Because a lot of really amazing things can happen once we give people access to education and the ability to, you know, all of that stuff. So I'm sorry, a kid just walked in and looked right at me. I was like,
You're keeping it real, Tiffany, and doing social work while talking about social work. Thank you. So Becky, thoughts from you in considering about the theme for Social Work Month, the time is right for social work, either about the pandemic or the racial traumas that we have all been continuously exposed to, and or thinking about the current climate of workforce issues in agencies, particularly social welfare agencies. So your thoughts on any of that?
It's really hard to follow Lauri and Tiffany because they are so well spoken and have such great things to say. So this is really challenging for me. I don't want to just echo everything they just said, but they both really stated it very, very well. But I would totally agree with, you know, coming out of that situation, and I think schools were very heavily affected. And I think we all know that, like kids being sent home from school and not being able to be on campus and not being able to be in that setting was very detrimental to a lot of them. Outside of the collective trauma of the whole situation, the whole just not being, not having that safety net, not having that shelter, like Tiffany said, from that storm that we were all experiencing. I think coming back to it just highlighted how important all that structure is. Having the social workers, the administrators, everybody that was able to support kids at school prior to the pandemic go away. I think we've seen a lot of fallout from that. And so coming back to it, it's just been really highlighted how important and crucial these services are and how needed they are. I've seen so much increase in school social workers across my districts. And even my program is just growing tremendously beyond what we can staff and what we can provide, because the need is so great. And not only the social workers recognize that, but administrators recognize that, teachers recognize that, teachers and have seen things that they never would have seen otherwise, you know. So they're learning how to connect with the school social workers and reach out for these types of services. And so there's just an increased need, a higher value. I think people recognize that and understand what the social work component does and how important it is, now that we've seen it kind of go away. Yeah, so I mean, the growth has been just absolutely tremendous, and I think it's so needed, and I think it's just the natural thing that would happen following what we've experienced.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Becky. So I think in the interest of time, we will actually move on to student questions. And then if there aren't enough student questions, we'll come back to some of the prepared questions. But I do want to make sure the students all have time to ask their questions. Right now, there's a question in the chat about internships. So I was wondering if you all as panelists could speak just a little bit about what internships opportunities you're aware of at your agency or schools or other schools. You know, so how does a student get an internship opportunity in school? And then also pivot and talk about future employment opportunities. So if a person wants to become a school social worker, how do you recommend that they pursue that pathway? And maybe we'll switch it up. And Becky, would you like to start first this time?
Sure, I'd be happy to. We actually have a tremendous internship program and internship opportunities. I currently have 2 ASU interns in my program, and we constantly, and I have, I think, 2 coming in the summer and already 1 lined up for the fall. So we very often and frequently have opportunities for interns in our program. Our interns typically partner with one of our school-based clinicians, and one of our, either myself or one of our MSWs or LMSWs in my program will kind of be their task instructor and train them on the day-to-day, teach them or allow them to shadow to learn some of the clinical components of the position. They would eventually kind of pick up their own caseload, having maybe 5 to 6 clients of their own that they would see. Maybe a school of their own that they could go to and see their kids at school 1 or 2 days a week. We also do telehealth, so interns are able to do telehealth on like evening hours. Sometimes their schedules, if they have jobs, we can be a little flexible on that because of the telehealth is available. But yeah, we constantly have internship opportunities, and this is true in all of the different parts of the Valley, not just in my program. But yeah, we for contact information, if someone was interested in an internship through Southwest, I would probably refer you to one of our HR representatives that kind of manages the intake of interns. So I don't know where to provide that information, but that's something I can definitely provide.
Becky, if you're able to open the chat, you can just type that right in. The chat should be in your bottom navigation screen. You'll see a little box
Okay.
that says chat. Open that and then just make sure it says to everyone, and then you can start typing.
Okay. And then just to add to that, we also frequently hire on interns after they've completed their internship because they enjoy the program, they get kind of immersed in their school, they want to stay. And so we frequently have employment opportunities following internship.
Wonderful, thank you.
Mhm.
And Tiffany, would you like to talk a little bit about what you know about internship opportunities as well as subsequent employment?
Yes, so we take interns every year. We currently have 2 that are here right now. We typically have more, so I was actually surprised we only had 2. All 19 of them, well, I will say this year, 17 of the 19 were available to have interns. You typically have to be here for a little bit before we'll let you have an intern. You know, like I said, it's a K-8. You would be working our school schedule. I think that that's kind of hard for some people though, as having to work from, 7 o'clock in the morning till 3:30 it could be kind of difficult. But we do accept interns. I put my email inside of the chat if anybody wanted to look into an internship for next year. But it does follow the normal school schedule, which can be hard for some people with their internships. So it would be from our next internship cycle would start in August of next year and go until May of the following year. So we too have hired some of our interns. We have some people who have been here a very long time that are going to be leaving. We actually had 2 people that are going to be retiring this year. And so if you guys are interested in a position, we're also going to be hiring for those positions. And during the next session, my SEL director, Malika Wadley, and I will be there, and she's amazing. And she will be signing people up for interviews on the spot because she really wants to get that stuff filled so that whoever we do hire can be part of our summer work. I do a retreat for my social workers every summer prior to them coming back, where we do trainings, team building activities, and just kind of try and get everybody. And then my new social workers, we have like an extra day of training with just me and you. So if you guys are interested in that stuff, but I think the cool thing about being an intern and working as an intern at a school is that can count towards your year that you need to get your school certification, your school social worker certification. We do give any new hire a year to get that if they don't have it. But the cool thing is if you interned with us for that year, we did have 2 interns that we hired 2 years ago, and they were both able to use the school year that they had with us in order to get that certificate right away. So that was kind of exciting, but we're always looking for interns. Like I said, there's so many different schools that it's a very good place. We also try and move you kind of see a lot of the different schools that we have.
Thank you, Tiffany. And Lauri.
Yeah, sure, of course. Oh, and just to piggyback on what Tiffany was saying, that if you don't happen to get into an internship at a school as a school social worker, then if you want to be a school social worker and get that certification, as long as you have a year's worth of experience in it with children aged in K through 12, then that'll also count towards certification as well through the Arizona Department of Education. Okay, so I'm actually a field instructor and I have an intern every year. I might have 2 interns next year, I'm not sure. Just go through the regular route through Sonia. I guess that's the system that you guys, yeah, Sonia. And so not everybody in my district has an intern, and I happen to be the only one. And the intern usually is just on site with me. And like Tiffany said, it's kind of a challenge because it is 7 a.m. to 3 or 3:30 p.m. Monday through Friday, and we don't work summers or weekend. I don't work summers or weekends at least. But it's a really great opportunity if you want to if you're really considering school social work. So basically it's shadowing at first, running around with me, just seeing what the day in and day out, and eventually greater and greater independence towards running groups and individual. And this role with me, we basically work in tandem with each other. We tag team a lot, and it's a lot of So it's, yeah, if you can do an internship anywhere, it's a really, really great opportunity to see what it really is and if you'd really like to do it, to see if it really is for you. And I also have to say in every district, it is a little bit different because not all school social workers are special ed social workers. Like me, some social workers service everybody. So it's pretty different at each of the school districts. Every school district does something differently in how they run their social work program. I think the other thing, I wrote something else down. Oh, and also because of the value and the greater value what we've been seeing as, there are, because of the school safety program grant that has been increasing the number of school social workers in our school districts, there's always be on the lookout for opportunities that come up because they're always increasing. They're increasing funding for school social workers in our school district. And a really good resource to keep an eye on is the School Social Work Association of Arizona. And if you follow their website, they always have job opportunities. And you don't have to be a school social worker to be a member. You can actually sign on as a student. I think it's $15 for the entire year. So it's a really great resource. You get their newsletters, and then you get, if you're really interested in school social work, they will provide updates on job opportunities and send those out accordingly. And I'll actually put the name of the organization in the chat box now.
That is great. Thank you, Lauri. That's a great resource. Okay, so another question really quickly for virtual internship opportunities. And Tiffany, you said you did not, but are the other panelists aware of whether or not any of the schools offer virtual opportunities, maybe for employment and or internships, fully virtual?
Within my program, unfortunately, that's not something we can accommodate either.
Okay, so pretty much if you're aiming to be a school social worker, you'll be working face-to-face with kiddos in schools or going to schools to serve them. You won't be doing virtual work. All right, questions from students. Students, if you have a question, please raise your hand using the, I think it's under the reactions. Yes, under your reactions box, you should be able to raise your hand. So go ahead and raise your hand and I will call on you to ask your question. Or you can put your question in the chat if that's what you would prefer. And let's see, Rosanna, did I pronounce your name correctly?
Close, it's Rosanna.
I'm sorry, say that again.
Rosanna?
Rosanna, okay, go ahead and ask your question.
Can you hear me okay? I have an earbud in.
Yes.
Okay, yeah, so I did put it in the chat. I originally started in this field of going back to school for social work because I wanted to be a school social worker. I worked in the Gilbert School District as a para. So I've been around social workers from elementary, now in the high school that I'm at. But my concern is that I'm getting feedback from other non-school social workers to not do it because of what the district may direct you or limit you in what you do as a school social worker. So I'm like, I kind of need to get a little bit more information about how much influence the district has on what you guys get to do.
I mean, I guess I can answer that. I mean, I would say this. When you are looking for a job, look at what the district's doing, look at where the money's going. For example, like in my district, and I don't know about other districts, we have an LCL director that directs all mental health services. And so she is an LCSW. She's going to be in the next session. And she is the one who spearheads a lot of that stuff and reminds them that we have a code of ethics and that this is what our jobs are and this is why we're in the school. Well, I say that every district's that way. I won't. I know that I have friends that do work in some of the other districts like Phoenix L and Phoenix Union who don't have a problem with that either. I think that especially now, given the emphasis on student and teacher mental health, I feel like I feel like a very valued member of the team and like an expert in my field, and that they definitely let me, sorry, the kids are yelling again. They definitely let me kind of lead the way and do the work, just like I would in any other place. And so maybe that was an old school thought. I know that prior, 10 years prior, a lot of our social workers who are retiring used to be what they called like paper pushers inside of the special education department and did a lot of like IEP stuff. That's not our role now. Our role, I'm very much a mental health person who does counseling, group counseling. Are there people I refer out to school-based mental health programs like Southwest? Yes, but that's more because it's maybe not something I can work with them during the school year. Then I think that they need access to mental health outside of it. So, but I think that there's a huge emphasis on letting social workers do what we do, which is part of that is the mental health piece. So.
Thank you, Tiffany. I was just waiting to see if any other panelists wanted to weigh in. If not, I'll go on to the next question. Okay, go ahead, Lauri.
Sorry, you're getting that feedback from people. And I think that we as school social workers can tell you that the turnover is not, there's very low turnover in school social work. That you won't find that in like mental health social work. You're not going to find that. School social work, it used to be very difficult to get into because when you're in school social work, you'll love it. And it's unfortunate that, that you've been hearing some discouraging things from people. And it's unfortunate. I think it maybe is an old school mindset or like a misinformation about what we do or what we put up with. Every place you're going to work is going to have some frustration, and every school district is different. And I think that's where, if you are interested in a position at a district or at a school, my advice would be to interview them, what their SEL program is about, what their beliefs and expectations around being a school social worker is, because they're gonna differ. And yeah, there is some politicism with SEL, unfortunately, and some school districts may be, for lack of a better term, a little bit more conservative. But that's where you, as the candidate, come in and ask them about that and see if it's actually a good fit for you, rather than you being a good fit for them. And so I think that's where you have the power in that.
Thank you.
Okay,
Lauri.
thank you. I really appreciate that.
Okay, Dahlia, am I pronouncing your name correctly?
Yeah, thank you.
Okay, Dahlia, you have a question.
Yeah, earlier Tiffany mentioned that there's like a social work certification that you need to have. Are there, and I hadn't heard of that before. So are there any other like requirements, certifications, like things that schools look for in a candidate? And is that stuff that you work on like after you graduate, or are those things you can work on during your program?
Oh, I wasn't, sorry, I can talk again. I just was trying to give somebody else a chance. It depends on the district and their requirements. Some people require LMSWs right now. Some people do not. At my particular district, we only require that you're an MSW. And with the school social worker certification, I just had it sitting here because I was helping somebody get it. And so I can put it in the chat for you guys, just information on it and where to find it. The requirements for that are just that you have a fingerprint clearance card, you have to pay a small fee, you have to turn in your transcripts, and then prove through a letter from wherever you did like your internship, or if you worked somewhere prior. So they were able to take my DCS experience and count that as working with children. And so it could be in other ways too. It doesn't necessarily just have to be in schools. But a lot of districts right now, as we were talking about, are allowing you to wait that year to get it if you need to. And it is like districts are fighting over people right now. So definitely treat yourself like an asset, because you guys are. Like, you guys, ASU graduates amazing MSW candidates, and everybody is lucky to be able to get one of them. So treat yourself and definitely shop around, and but treat yourself like the gym that you guys are, because you guys really are.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you, Tiffany. Did anyone else want to weigh in from the panel? Lauri or Becky? I think Tiffany adequately answered it, but
Yeah, I was just, oh, sorry. Just
no, go
in
ahead, Becky.
my program's a little unique. Remember, I'm in community behavioral health and we partner with the districts. So that requirement is not there for us. We hire on MSWs, LMSWs. Part of our program is that we do provide, because we're doing direct practice, that clinical supervision piece. And so we've also had clinicians come in with an MSW. We really encourage them to obtain their license just because I value that kind of like professional development. And then once they have achieved that, they are able to work on their direct hours and receive clinical supervision towards their independent license.
And Becky, I noticed that you are in LCSW. Is that required at your agency to be able to do mental health services in schools? Do you have to have an LCSW eventually?
No, and MSW is okay. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah.
But you all do offer that clinical licensure hours. If someone wanted to work towards their LCSW, they could get their hours at your agency.
Yes, because they're doing direct practice and I supervise them, and the other staff that we find staff within our programs and within our agency that can provide that clinical supervision for anybody that is seeking it.
Great, thank you. So a great student, if you're interested in the LCSW, to pursue that LCSW, if you don't want to actually work, directly at a mental health, at a community-based mental health agency that's not school related. I hope I said that correctly, Becky. Heather, you have a question.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for taking the time to do this. My question is, what do you feel the pros and cons are to MSW, LMSW, LCSW? What are your thoughts on each of those? Does that make sense?
Okay, I can start. I think in the very least, get your LMSW. In the very, very least, it opens up more doors. It shows greater potential responsibility towards your work ethics in the eyes of the public and in the eyes of many agencies. In the very least, LMSW. And if that's my opinion. I don't think there's any cons to any of those. I mean, I think it's just a beautiful thing having your MSW in and of itself, but in the very, very least, start off with your LMSW. And if you can gain the supervision, LCSW. Yeah, that's my opinion. Anybody else wants to answer?
I agree, obviously very partial to the MSW, but also the license, I agree with Lauri. I think it's super, super helpful and really good for you to have. Really right upon graduation, it would be great to go ahead and pursue that. The independent license is something that you need if you really want to pursue clinical work and direct practice in that way. Then that's kind of something you do have to have that if you ever want to kind of work independently. And I've seen a lot of people in my program go on to, once they've received their LCSW, their independent license, go on to work independently in their own practices and find that really super fulfilling because they're basically running their own business, doing their own thing, getting to kind of choose. I mean, they have all the freedom in the world to choose how they want to work, who they want to work with, what kind of issues they want to specialize in. So yeah, I think it's definitely needed if you want to do direct practice and work in the clinical realm.
Yeah, I would just agree with both of them and say that licensure is always a good idea. At the very least, your LMSW, a lot of school districts are moving to models where they're offering clinical supervision also. It's a little bit harder because we have like a huge gap where we're not there. And so like, how do we manage that, right? Because the hours are a little bit harder. But they've figured it out. A lot of districts have. And, I know our district is, looking to hire somebody soon to be doing that. And that's an exciting thing. But, you know, if that's something that you're interested in, your LCSW is look for a district that's going to provide that for you, or, you know, has plans to, would be important. But at the very least, your LMSW is, I think, very important.
Absolutely. Thank you for the question, Heather. And thank you, Becky and Tiffany, for commenting. Other questions? We have time for one more question. No more questions from students. So then maybe panelists, if each of you could maybe provide one piece of word of wisdom or a takeaway about school social work and why it's a great area of practice in social work. And we'll start, Tiffany, with you. You haven't gotten to start yet.
Thank you. I feel like I've talked a lot. I'm sorry. So I would say that, you know, if you enjoy the energy of schools, being in an energy, it's a different kind of energy, right? It's different than hospitals. It's different than going into an office. There is vibrant children's energy everywhere you will walk. And if that's something that and we also get amazing breaks. I mean, I always tell people I'm trying to hire that. I would say that out of all of the jobs that I've had in social work or in other places in my life, I found like a true home in school social work. And it is one of the most rewarding things that I can, one of the most rewarding positions I've ever had. And if I can give you any advice is like, follow your heart. And, you know, if you try it out and you love it, stay here. Because like Lauri was saying, people do not leave. Right? Like we don't have a ton of positions open. The positions you're seeing open are positions that districts were begging ADE for the grant money so they could add them, right? Like we don't have a lot of turnover in school districts because you get to go to pep rallies, you get to go watch soccer games, you get to go, you know, hang out with kids at lunch. Like it's definitely a different place and it is an amazing job. So my suggestion is give it a try if you're interested in it.
Thank you, Tiffany. Becky, final words of advice?
Yeah, I agree. If you like working with kids, if you like playing, if you like talking, if you like being creative, there's no shortage of that in schools. I just totally agree. There's just totally an energy there. It's a lot of fun. There's a lot of joy involved. I mean, there's hard work that we do. But there's a lot of fun and a lot of really upsides to working in schools and being around kids and getting to like immerse yourself in the community and the family and that whole environment. So.
Thank you, Becky and Lauri. Final takeaway.
Sure. I would say if you're really interested in this, definitely try to intern somewhere. Talk to more school social workers, people who have worked in school social work, getting more of a better feel. I think also there are a lot of great benefits to this job, a lot of great benefits. And I think that it's the perfect opportunity to really do micro, meso, and macro practice. You can do all three of those things as a school social worker. You can affect your students' lives, you can affect the community's lives, and you can also affect on a greater scale level. And in school social work, there's so many opportunities to even get involved in like legislative efforts, especially if you are involved with an organization like School Social Work Association of Arizona. There's a lot of opportunities to get involved in that level that aren't necessarily present in other types of social work as an MSW. It's amazing. There's just, you can't beat the benefits, you can't beat the summers off, and like just the independence to do what you want, you know, like how to help teens or children and families and communities.
Wonderful, thank you. So let's give our panelists a round of applause, or you can give them a virtual thumbs up. We so appreciate you all spending your time. So thank you, Lauri. Thank you, Tiffany. Thank you, Becky. Very insightful, valuable information. Thank you. And I believe then we are wrapped up.